Y'all know nothing about this. You need to pay attention. Sit back and relax. It's time for Goodall's Country Kitchen.
Come along with me this far. I appreciate your patience. I'm going to be covering part 2 of my mini series of John Hunt Morgan's raid through Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. I'm here at the Corydon Battlefield Park. The Battle of Corydon took place on July 9th, 1863, which the day before I already covered the series, which the day before on July 8th, John Hunt Morgan crossed the river at Brandenburg. I showed you all that part of the story during the Jailhouse Pizza review. So as Hunt Morgan crossed the river on the night of July 8th, he was met by the 6th Indiana Legion consisting of 450 men. They fired across the river at John Hunt Morgan's forces. This is a pre-war Napoleon 6-pounder. Would have been similar to the one that they used against Morgan. John Hunt Morgan began crossing the river on the steamboat John T. McCombs and the Alice Dean and was met by the forces under the 6th Indiana Legion. There was a running battle that night, and then the next morning on July 8th, the forces of the 6th Indiana Militia under command of Colonel Lewis Jordan set up a line of defense with 450 men across the Mockport Road, which is just south of here. At the onset of the battle, Colonel Jordan's men were able to repulse 3 different attacks by Morgan's men. It wasn't until later that Morgan's artillery was pulled up that the tide of the battle changed. And I'll tell you more about that in just a second. I'm going to give you a little walking tour of what to see here. It's a very beautiful park and well worth the drive from Louisville to come up and visit this place. Now here we have a very interesting artifact. This is the actual mooring chain from the steamboat Alice Dean. This was recovered decades later when the Alice Dean was discovered, when the water levels went down on the Ohio. Some of the artifacts were taken at that time. You can see some in different museums. Well, this was donated by the Nina and Galen Faith family, and it now belongs to the Battlefield Park here at Corydon. But how interesting. Look at this. Man, that thing is heavy. The steamboat Alice Dean was burned and sunk by John Hunt Morgan after he completed the crossing of his forces there at Brandenburg. Very neat artifact here. Morgan had an artillery battery of his own, which consisted of 4 10-pound Parrott rifles, which were very efficient artillery pieces during the Civil War. This is a very picturesque park here. That's a cabin that was not here at the time. It was built in the 1840s and then relocated here a few years ago as the park headquarters, so to speak. This is a memorial to Morgan's dead, some of the dead. He had, I believe, 11 that were killed and 40 some odd wounded. And then on the other side, you see the names of the Home Guard, the Indiana Legion. Now, how brave these guys had to have been. Just the name John Hunt Morgan alone sent fear up people's spines. But these 450 men stood in a line of battle and faced 2,500 of some of the Confederacy's finest cavalry. Now, this is very convenient. Every day they set up this placard showing you the battle line, the different regiments. I'm over here across the river from downtown Louisville at historic Charlestown, Indiana. And today I want to talk to you about KGF Homes. Why throw your money away on rent when you can make your dreams come true in a brand new home with a small town charm? KGF Homes start at $180,000 for a 3-bedroom and 2 full baths, and your payment will only run between $1,400 and $1,500 a month. And if that don't grab you, all kitchen appliances are included. So always remember, KGF don't stand for kind of gotten fat. It stands for keep God first. So set up your appointment today and move into your new home. And don't forget to tell them Good All's Country Kitchen sent you. As I said, the night before on the 8th, Morgan ferried his men at Morven's Landing with the Steamboat Alice Dean and the John T. McCombs. They were met by Colonel Timberlake of the 6th Indiana Legion, but they put up a resistance here. And then once John Hunt Morgan deployed his artillery and started firing on Timberlake's men, they went ahead and scattered and set up another defense line and continued to skirmish with John Hunt Morgan as a delaying action to where Colonel Jordan could set up his defense line up outside of Corydon. You see here, they had the different companies. They had an east wing and a west wing. There were 3 frontal assaults by Morgan's men originally, and Morgan's men were pinned down by the west wing because of those Henry repeating rifles. They could fire 16 shots without reloading. So they actually had them pinned down in open ground for about 20 minutes before Morgan and his artillery started lobbing shells. Once that started happening, it dispersed the Home Guard units, and they retreated into the town and set up a defense line. You see here a very impressive plaque memorial. Tells a short description of what took place here that day on July 9th, 1863. You got to remember at the time, during early July, you had the Battle of Gettysburg took place on July 1st through 3rd, 1863. You had the siege at Vicksburg. Vicksburg fell on July 4th. So you had Lee's defeat at Gettysburg on the 3rd. You had the fall of Vicksburg on July 4th. And meanwhile, John Hunt Morgan has crossed the river from Kentucky into Indiana, and he doesn't know about this yet. There are theories that Morgan had plans to link up with Robert E. Lee in Pennsylvania and join forces with him. But we will tell you more about that once we get into town. See here, life-size John Hunt Morgan. This very picturesque park here, tucked away in the woods. Tell you what, you could spend a whole day in Corydon, and there's a whole lot more to see, which I'm going to show you when we continue the Battle of Corydon when I get downtown. All right, I'm going to go check out this cabin. Like I said, the park headquarters here. Welcome to the Battle of Corydon, 1863. Okay, we have a loom here where you can take wool and make clothing. I was told that there's somebody that actually presently still uses this and makes stuff. Look at your old stone fireplace.
Old whiskey jug.
Yeah, and this is all authentic stuff in here. Historically correct to the time period. I love these old logs here. Look how big they are, thick. You don't see logs like this anymore. There's a whiskey jug. I'm sure Morgan's men probably would have had a good time using that.
Churns.
Old butter churns. All the cooking was done there right in the fireplace. Look at all the kitchen utensils. Got an upstairs up there. It's usually where all the kids slept.
They had 8 kids that slept up there.
Is that right? 8 kids, he said, slept up there. Whenever you come to the battlefield park here at Corydon, you definitely got to come check out the headquarters building here.
See the meat tenderizers over there? That big flat board was an Arnold board. It's a homemade Arnold.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Old ironing board.
They got the iron sitting on the ones that for the kids to keep their feet warm, and then on the brothers they use iron with.
Very interesting. I love these old artifacts, old cast iron cooking utensils. You know me, I'm always fascinated with how they made the food. Go figure. All right, before I get out of here, I want to introduce you to James. He helps take care of the Battle of Corydon Battlefield Park. How long have you been doing this, James?
It'll be 3 years in April.
How long has the Battlefield Park been here?
Since 1977, 1979 is when it's been here for a long time, but it's just been recognized on the restaurant since 1979.
Okay, well, I mean, I've been a big Civil War buff ever since I can remember, and I've always wanted to come here, and it took me having to go eat somewhere before I actually got the chance to come here. So I really appreciate what you do preserving history. All right, we are at the actual first Capitol building in the state of Indiana here in the square at downtown Corydon. As you see behind me, it's still perfectly preserved. It was the Capitol building until 1825 when the Capitol was reestablished in Indianapolis. Okay, but this is a focal point in the Battle of Corydon because after Colonel Jordan's Union forces were routed after the Confederate artillery started shelling them with the 4 10-pound Parrott rifle cannons, they reestablished a defense line here in downtown. A lot of citizens here, innocent women and children. So Morgan ordered a couple of warning shots fired into downtown. And once that happened, Colonel Jordan did not see the need in any more senseless bloodshed. So he hoisted the white flag on top of the tower of the Capitol building. And at that time, Morgan went ahead and came in under flag of truce and accepted the surrender from Colonel Jordan. So at that time, Morgan's forces spent the rest of the afternoon going around taking needed supplies. Of course, they relieved the local bank out of several $1,000s. And they made the local grist mill owners pay a ransom of $1,000 apiece to keep from their businesses from being burnt down. But before he left, Morgan had a nice little quaint lunch, which I want to show you where that took place. This is the site of the old Kentner House Inn where John Hunt Morgan ate lunch after the Battle of Corydon that day. That is the building that was built in 1873 because the original Kentner Inn burnt down in a fire after the Civil War, which was originally right over here where the Corydon Library is located. But as John Hunt Morgan was eating lunch and gloating over his recent victory that day, the wife of the owner of the Kentner Inn gave John Hunt Morgan the recent newspaper. That was the place and time where John Hunt Morgan first got the news that Robert E. Lee had been defeated at Gettysburg on July 3rd. And he also saw and read in the paper that Vicksburg, Mississippi fell and surrendered the following day on July 4th. So this is July 9th, 5 days later. Morgan had these plans to possibly link up with Lee. Well, now it was an uh-oh moment because there was nobody to go meet him in Pennsylvania and he was trapped. He could not go back across the Ohio River. So at that time, Morgan planned to head in the direction of Madison, Indiana, where he could cross the river back into Kentucky and make his way back south. So that's where we're going to pick up the rest of this story. I'm going to Madison next week, and I'm going to eat at the historic Hinkle's Hamburgers. So make sure you tune in for that, and we're going to pick up for part 3.